even today in India, pursuing sport is not easy because you just put yourself in a position where everybody is just willing to give you so much of criticism and free feedback. Like even when I took up sport, more than anything, I got to hear that, it'll affect your academics. It's a stupid decision. It's a waste of time. It's not going to do any good in the longer run of things. So why waste time and money on it? So with all this coming your way, it's kind of tough to keep going when, things get rough within sport or when you encounter failures.
Hello and welcome to Go Beyond Sports with me, Sonali Gupta, sportingly yours, with Priyal Keni today as our guest. Thank you so much, Priyal, for joining in.
And thank you so much, Sonali, for inviting me. And it's amazing that we're actually happening to record this session on the occasion of National Sports Day. So really looking forward to our interaction over the next 30 minutes.
That's exactly what I was just going to mention is that, and it happens to be National Sports Day, and I have Priyal Keni with me, who's an international rifle shooter. How better does it get to be able to speak and talk a lot of sports? So going straight ahead into introduction of my guest today, Priyal Keni is an international rifle shooter. She's a chartered accountant and a 5x TEDx speaker. As a Shiv Chhatrapati awardee and founder of sports-based NGO, she has worked with over 4,000 children. She's a prolific speaker and writer and has delivered lectures at esteemed institutions like IIT Mumbai, SRCC, NASM, to name a few. And she has a very active social media presence with over 32,000 followers in her network. She's also part of the LinkedIn's Creator Accelerator program. She was selected as the United National Women's Generation Equality Ally, and she is actively leading initiatives in the area of women empowerment and gender equality. Thank you so much, Priyal, for joining in. There is just so much that we can talk and learn from your own experiences on these absolutely diverse subjects that you incorporate into your life.
Thanks a lot, Sonali, and that was quite an introduction. I think the highlight of everything that you said is the fact that I'm an international rifle shooter, and it all started from the sports journey because that is what motivated me to start my own non-profit, start working in the social impact space, and now there's so much I'm doing with UN Women and a lot of other amazing commitments that I've been working on.
Absolutely. So it's a question that I ask and I start with. What made you choose sports? What's the aspect of sports in your life that made you want to then choose shooting as a professional career? Mm-hmm. And how has it affected you into becoming the human that you are today?
So I think when I first stepped into sport, and shooting was not the first sport that I pursued. I was a very curious kid when I was in school. So I had tried a lot of extracurricular activities. So my mom always wanted me to become a classical singer or dancer. But I think within a year, both of us realized that, grace and patience and dignity, these are not my attributes. I'm someone who is more competitive, someone who is more aggressive and would like to get into sport. So that's when I just started joining the most popular sports on campus, like football, basketball, throwball. And I did a couple of them. Though I loved playing these sports, I just felt that, I'm more of a mental game kind of a person. That's when I first tried out chess, and wow. I fell in love with the sport. And then that's how I realized that the entire transition from, being into more aggressive on-field sport to continuing to be in sports, continuing to be competitive, but moving more towards like mental kind of sport. And that's how I eventually also stumbled upon shooting, because I remember a notice had come out in school promoting the shooting club. There was this orientation session over the weekend, and they had written a few things about the sport. If you attend the orientation session, you get to fire a few live rounds, and it's a mental sport. It improves your child's concentration, and I think that entire mental sport aspect, number one, hung by me. And number two, the fact that, even if I went for the orientation, I'll get to fire a few bullets. I was immediately smitten by that idea. So I was like, okay, fine, let's go and try it out. So me and mom went over the weekend, and trust me, at that point of time, there was nothing in my mind that, I want to take up this sport or any dangerously grand plan of, playing for India at any point of time. So it was just about, curiosity that let's try this new thing and see how it goes. And I loved the atmosphere. I loved it when I first took my first shot at the target, and I was like, okay, let me also enroll for their basic training course that they have, and let's see how it goes. And it was just one thing after another, and then I started playing for the school, started playing for the city, state, and it just happened in a blink. And within 18 months, I looked back and I had already got a shortlist for the Commonwealth Youth Games back then. And I just realized that, very unknowingly, in a very short span of time, this has become such an integral part of my life, how much I love this sport, how much it actually means to me. And, now giving up doesn't seem like an option. So it just happened without any plan, without any strategy. I just fell in love with the sport, and now I just don't see myself. I feel I'm very incomplete without it.
Absolutely. I think sports, it's just so unassuming in the way that it becomes a part of us, that, like you very rightly said, that you didn't realize that, when it really became such an integral part of your life. But and just talking more about shooting, because that's something that you also are. Is it a general perception that shooting is a resource incentive sport? What are your opinions on it? And do you think it's kind of more feasible or less feasible for regular folks to pursue it?
So in comparison to other sports, yes, relatively it is more resource incentive, because it's a game of precision. So like other sports, largely most of them are team games. So an entire team comes together, they play, whereas shooting is an individual sport. So the expenses are also largely individually borne by the shooter. And secondly, because it's a game of precision, you have to compete with the best equipment, because it's right now the scoring happens on a decimal basis. That means every millimeter of you getting the shot more inside or on the inner side of the target really helps you increase your score over a 40 shot or a 60 shot match. So it's become so competitive. It's become a game of so much of perfection that yes, there you always have to compete with the best equipment. You might have to have the best form of training, and it's not just about the physical training that I'm talking to, or the shooting coaching. There are a lot of other aspects also involved in it, like getting a nutritionist, getting a physiotherapist, because at the end of the day, you need a 10 on 10 perfection with respect to all the other aspects that come into play, so that you can give in your best on match day. So, of course, it is kind of a resource incentive, but that being said, the sport has really, really grown over the past one and a half decade. Like when I started in the sport to where it is right now, it's gained a lot of popularity given the stellar performances that we've had in shooting consistently at some of the big competitions globally. So a lot of government support also comes. Of course, once you get into the Indian team, you're fully funded by the government of India. So a lot of support comes from there. Even before that, there are a lot of sports organizations that support upcoming athletes, a lot of private schemes and scholarships. And now that shooting has become a very popular sport, they understand the sport and they are also willing to invest in athletes who are in the sport. So there are a lot of avenues and opportunities available if you are really willing to put yourself out there and explore those to fund whatever you want to do ahead in shooting. So absolutely. I would say for anyone thinking to take up the sport, do not self-exclude yourself by just thinking on the outside it looks like a very expensive sport. I have been in the Indian team myself, and majority of the team comes from a very humble background. Nobody is like born into royalty and only those people take up the sport. So we've all figured out our ways of actually pursuing the sport and living our dreams, and I'm sure you will also be able to do it.
That's such an amazing thing to say, Priyal, because it's just so motivating out there for people who hear it out. But I must also talk about something that's kind of a flip side of the fact that shooting was not a part of the 2022 Commonwealth Games, and there's also been excluded from the final list of the 2026 Commonwealth Games. So how does this affect shooting in general and India in specific? Because shooting is in fact one of our highest medal tally winning sport.
Yeah, I mean, the news of it getting excluded from 2026 also was quite a bummer, as I may call it. But
Yes.
as far as the sport is concerned, we have a lot of other competitions that are going all year round. We have World Cups, World Championships, World University Games. So, from an entire sports perspective, it is another very popular match that will probably not be happening. So, even though the impact will be felt because a lot of the Commonwealth nations really look forward to the Commonwealth Games, so now that won't be happening. I think the impact from a sport perspective won't be nothing, will not be much because things will still continue. We still have the Olympics, we still have the World Championships to look forward to. But yes, from an India perspective, shooting has been one of the sports that has always got a very heavy medal haul at every Commonwealth Games. So that is something that will definitely in fact impact our medal tally because we've had like consistently after one Commonwealth game after another, we have won a lot of medals at the game. So yes, I mean excluding the sport from both 2022 and 2026 is definitely going to show that difference in the medal tally because all the medals that would definitely be guaranteed through shooting won't be coming in for both these games.
Right. And in your opinion, do you think sports still is a luxury in our Indian society, lest just a few sports that are more sustainable than the others?
So I wouldn't say it's a luxury. Like over here, there is probably a fact and a perspective. From a very factual point of view, it's not a luxury because, like I told you, there are a lot of opportunities available out there. Like even when you talk about shooting, now that I'm into the sport with both my feet, I can definitely vouch for it. Though on the outside, it's considered as a very luxurious sport. Very few people do. My city, that is Mumbai, alone has close to like 10 shooting ranges, and no matter which area of the city you're staying in, there is something within commutable distance available for you, some facility where you can access a coach, access the shooting range, access any of the equipment, and all from a very economical perspective because majority of the people in the sport come from a very humble background and not from a very well-to-do background. So it's not considered as a sport only for the elite. So from a factual perspective, this is what the truth is. But if, of course, from an outsider's point of view, I still believe that most of the people in India still look at sport as a source of entertainment or as
Right.
as a source of leisure because the entire build-up is about now. If someone says sports, people generally the first thing that comes to their mind is cricket or football. And then they think about IPL, they think about FIFA, then they're like, oh, let's go for a match, let's have a fun time, let's just chill with friends.
Yeah.
So when you talk about sport, the first thing doesn't come that, oh, I should become an athlete, I should train, I should win for the country. So
Yeah.
because sports is so heavily...
spectators.
Yes, so because sport is still more heavily skewed towards, let's be the audience, entertainment and leisure. People still end up thinking that it's a luxury and it's only for the very few people who definitely know they want to build a career in it or have the extra time and money to pursue it.
Absolutely, and so agree to it. But so, is there anything then in your journey, or maybe in the ones that you have seen around you, that hinders this entry into sports from a social point of view?
So I think one of the biggest hindrances I have seen at the start for a lot of professionals or a lot of budding sports enthusiasts who want to get started is having a very strong support system because trust me, once you're in it and you have the right support system, there are many doors you can knock on. Like if you knock on 10 doors, 2 or 3 will definitely open. You will figure out a way. Like I've had my highs and lows in sports too. I'm not going to lie about it that it's a very lovely journey and it's just going to be very rewarding. No, you're going to have your fair share of failures. You're going to hit a dead end couple of times, but that is what makes you a stronger person. In fact, that is what has played a pivotal role in shaping my individuality. So I believe that the biggest hindrance that generally comes in is having a support system because even today in India, pursuing sport is not easy because you just put yourself in a position where everybody is just willing to give you so much of criticism and free feedback. Like even when I took up sport, more than anything, I got to hear that, it'll affect your academics, it's a stupid decision, it's a waste of time, it's not going to do any good in the longer run of things. So why waste time and money on it? So with all this coming your way, it's kind of tough to keep going when things get rough within sport or when you encounter failures. But if you have a very strong support system, like I had my mom and dad, especially my mom was like a strong pillar of support for me. So even there were days where, I did not believe in myself. She chose to bet on me. And I knew that when, she can bet on me, I will bet on myself. And though that kind of, kept my journey, helped me continue my journey in sports. So I think having a strong support system is very important, which is why even today I interact with a lot of school going children and their parents. And I just tell the parents that, let your child genuinely enjoy sports. Don't force or impose performance. Don't set benchmarks or score expectations, or don't compare that, if your classmate got a medal, you also have to do that in the next competition. Like, let them generally enjoy, because as long as the love for sports stays, the excellence, the performance, everything will follow suit.
Absolutely. And tell me then, in these conversations that you have with people at the grassroots, if that's what we can say, would it be correct to say that sports still is largely male dominated?
Yes, it is largely male dominated, mainly because a lot of people still think that pursuing sport is a boy thing. So even though a lot of girls are willing to take it up, they shy away because number one, they do not have the right support from their families, and number two, there are so many stereotypes that girls shouldn't pursue sport because it like, for example, a few things that I personally had to hear when I took up shooting was, if you're going to train with a 6.5 kg rifle, you'll develop a pretty masculine physique, and then you'll not continue to look like beautiful and graceful the way a girl has to look. If you're going to train in the sun for so many hours, you're just going to get a dark complexion. It's not good. So people even today are willing to prioritize, the fact that a girl should be good looking and graceful over the other benefits that, a girl can go out there, establish herself in sport and actually win laurels for the country. So there is still that looming stereotype. There is still a lot of different kind of perception that people have towards sports. And because of all these reasons, even though a lot of girls take up sport, sustaining it or continuing in it is always a challenge for them, which is why we always find that when you look at the absolute numbers, there are more men than women in any given sport. But that being said, over the last 1.5 years, things have drastically changed. And though I still believe that there are miles to go for us, over the last 1.5 years, the entire shift and focus towards women's sport has really shot up, and it's growing at a good momentum. So there is a lot of positive change that we are getting to see.
Yes, and we hope it just continues in absolute leaps and bounds, and it's amazing. Yes, there is so much that's going on for women and girls, to take up sports, and we really think maybe perhaps education and awareness is just the right answer. Something that you have been doing a lot through your own foundation as well. Since the UN has designated sports as a tool to achieve 7 Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. How do you think sports will work in India as a tool to promote this sustainable development?
So in India, people still look at sport as a source of entertainment. So even when I use the word sport and sustainability in the same sentence, or go and tell someone that, I have a sports-based NGO and I'm trying to achieve the sustainable development goals through the medium of sport, they're just confused because they're like, what are you trying to do? How can you get sports to, create a social impact, achieve our sustainable development goals? But globally, there are a lot of organizations that have started investing and implementing sport for development projects, because they've kind of realized that, sports is such a flexible and cohesive tool to actually achieve individual development, community development. Like if you talk from an Indian perspective, sports is that neutralizer, or it's that one thing that, creates a level playing field where at a very early age, children learn a very important lesson that, irrespective of one's background, sexual orientation, age, or anything else like community or identity, the only thing that matters is what one brings to the team and the game. So they learn very important aspects like, team, being a team player, respecting someone else, and being there for each other, and just looking at failure as nothing but a stepping stone to success. And given that we are a country that is so torn apart by all these communal, religious, and regional differences, like teaching children about these important aspects at a very early age is very important, because that's the kind of upbringing, that's the kind of thinking they grow up with. So at a later stage in their life, it's not that tough when you suddenly tell them, not to talk about anything relating to the community or anything related to religion. And that, I believe, will help us achieve so many of our sustainable development goals from a social perspective. If we empower more children to make a career in sport, it will help us achieve so many of our SDGs from an economic perspective. It'll most importantly help us bridge the gender divide, because you're at a very early age teaching both girls and boys that they are at par. Girls realize that sports is not just a boy thing, they can excel at it, whereas boys also become champions of gender equality because they are empowering their friends who are girls to also take up sport and succeed in it. So it's a very beautiful and fun way of teaching a lot of important life lessons that are otherwise not taught within the four walls of the classroom.
The importance also of allowing girls to have a voice of their own, because sport demands that much emotion and that much passion, right? So for women to be able to perhaps express even aggression, at least becomes a form of acceptance that yes, you could be aggressive, like you very rightly said, that that we are still looked upon as docile and having to be very prim and proper. Then when you are on a sport field and screaming and shouting, it just does not come across as very ladylike in a way. So and which is where I think this whole concept, and perhaps for us to change our own thinking, is the simplest way to put it. In the so many conversations that you have had, inclusivity in sports is perhaps something that is being talked about a lot, and you've already touched upon it in terms of communities coming together, in terms of genders. But what do you now talk about, like when you go down further into inclusivity for all the other genders also, and how easy it is to integrate, and what could be the ways in which we can bring everyone together?
So I think inclusivity is very important. And even when we work with children through the local schools and at the village and grassroots level, one of the biggest challenges for us is to implement any program where we can actually make girls and boys engage in the program together. Because even today at a grassroots level and in a lot of these schools, because of a lot of reasons and challenges, even PT teachers prefer having sports classes separately for girls and separately for boys. And then it just happens that boys end up having a different kind of training and are pushed into more aggressive sports, whereas with girls they are a little more lenient, because they also have their own challenges that they have to look up to. And then girls are more motivated to take up more easygoing sports like gymnastics, or something that is still considered more of a girl sport than a boy sport. So they are deprived of a lot of opportunities to pursue other sports which they might be good at. For example, like when I also said I want to take up rifle shooting, a lot of people said that you will have to train in a very different setup. It's a very male dominated sport. Most of the shooting ranges are within army cantonment, so that is where you will be living and training and doing everything. So are you sure you're comfortable with it? So because of all these things, inclusivity is one of the biggest challenges. And what we also try to do with whatever project we work on is just ensuring if we can foster that kind of an environment where girls and boys together can pursue sport, and there is no differences between the two, because that's one of the best ways of teaching children that everybody is at par and you shouldn't discriminate against another just on the grounds of gender. So inclusivity is important. I still feel that at an urban level it's still coming in, because we all study in co-ed schools and we have a very different kind of approach and thinking. But at a grassroots level, it still continues to be one of the biggest challenges.
Right. And continuing on the same topic, you are a United Nations Generation Equality Ally. So how has that journey been, and how have you been able to incorporate that within your own NGO, or perhaps what you are doing at the grassroots?
So I started working with the UN earlier this year only, and I always was following the Generation Equality campaign and was an absolute fan and cheerleader of it, because it's all about gender equality, and it was about resolving socioeconomic issues from a very feminist perspective. And one thing that I always working towards trying to promote or spread awareness about is the fact that gender equality is not just a woman's issue. In fact, it's a human issue, because both sides of the spectrum, that is men and women, are suffering in their own way, and we often don't realize it. So when I got a chance to be associated with the UN as a generation equality ally, I of course jumped in with both feet, and I was like super excited about it, because we need to initiate a dialogue about this. We need to highlight ways by which gender equality is actually affecting everyone, and it's not just a woman's issue, or it's not just a myth that women are not favored in today's world, and there's nothing like inequality. So a lot of these things need to be highlighted, and my focus, of course, will always continue to be with respect to women in sport, because I just feel we need to address issues like girls being pulled out of sport once they attain puberty, they being deprived from pursuing certain sports like gymnastics and swimming because of the attire, women still being told that there is no future if you pursue a career in sport, the entire pay gap when it comes to the same sport, but just with respect to women's sport and men's sport. So all these important aspects need to be addressed. And even if you look at the other aspects of sports, not just on the field but even off the field, we have so many few women in sports administrative bodies, or serving as referees or umpires. Even that needs to change. So a lot of these gender inequality issues within the realm of sport is something I will be working on, or something I'm looking at currently, and hopefully want to continue to work in the same direction and see some impactful, positive, tangible change in the years to come.
Wow, I mean, this is absolutely amazing, and obviously our best wishes, for you to be able to continue this journey of yours and make this change from a very, very social standpoint. I'm going to have a few fun questions now at the end of this. Really, it's very, very insightful in a way to sort of understand where you're coming from, and to know that yes, all hope's not lost, right? We only need to tweak a few things to understand that we are on the right path and we are on the right journey with people like you who are there to support and to promote and to create the kind of impact that you are. So a quick question round: 100 medals in one Olympics for India by what year?
If I were given the choice, I would say the very next Olympics, like 2024. Let's go for it.
Corporate or sports?
So I think sports, because I carry a lot of my sports learnings to the boardroom. In fact, that's something I keep telling consistently, that even if I perform well within a corporate context, it's largely because of things or key learnings from my journey as a sports person.
Right. This doesn't feature your sport, but football or cricket?
In general, I think cricket, because everyone at home is a cricket fan. So have this involvement with the sport, and it's a family thing to just sit down for matches and spend some good time together. So yeah, cricket.
Sports over academics or otherwise?
So that's a really tough one, and I would say it's just unfair to choose one over the other. But I think definitely a healthy mix of both. Like, I would hate myself if I would just say academics, even though I have always been a nerd all my life.
Right.
I think it's a healthy balance of both.
And how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
So I think the way I would describe myself in 3 words would be very self-driven, because I have immense clarity with respect to where I see myself, what my goals are. Number 2 is I'm extremely passionate about what I do. So whatever I do, I have to have a lot of passion in it. I will not otherwise take it up or give it my 100%. And third thing that I have been told most commonly by a lot of people is I'm someone who comes out as being very empathetic, and I always respect the other person, put myself in the other person's shoes before I form any kind of opinion or share any kind of perspective. So probably these are 3 words I would describe myself with.
Absolutely, and I would say they're absolutely perfect from what I have seen and heard and read from all of your amazing, impactful posts also. So thank you so much, Priyal, for spending this afternoon with us at Go Beyond Sports and me, Sonali Gupta. And thank you so much, everyone, for your support. Please do continue to like, share, and comment. Helps us uh, reach out to more people with your support. Thank you so much for being with me here, and see you on the next episode with another interesting guest. Thank you.